This is ESPN Esports. I'm Arda Ocal. Happy to be joined by Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. It's back, the remastered versions, out September 4th on Windows, PS4, and Xbox One. Did you ever think you would hear that, Tony? I mean, my goodness, the series is decades old, and here we are, a brand new remaster in 2020 coming onto new platforms.
No, it's all just been a crazy dream. I mean, just the idea that we ever got to do a game or a sequel was incredible. And that 20 years later, people still want to see it and they want to see it updated. I don't take it for granted. I feel very lucky.
So we haven't seen a Tony Hawk title in several years. Why was now the right time to, in particular, remaster 1 and 2?
You know what? The fans have been asking for it. And the requests have been getting louder and louder in recent years. We were doing a fundraiser for public skate parks a while back, and I needed Activision's blessing because we were going to do some highlights of THPS because 20 years was approaching. And in our talks, someone just kind of threw out, why don't we remaster the original games? And I said, you don't understand how many people asked me that. And that was it. That was the seed.
After you and Activision separated, did you think that was it for you in video games? Did you think that your long journey with video games and how much it changed your career and everything, was that chapter over? Were you looking past that?
I never say never. I had been inquiring about possibly doing a VR thing, and that didn't really pan out. That'd be kind of tricky in the skate realm because I think people would get dizzy and sick if they're actually physically, like, if it's POV skating. But I had been just sort of testing the waters of that and maybe a mobile game. And when this idea came up with Activision, I was like, Activision is like, that's been my best relationship, probably the best business collaboration will ever do in my lifetime. And when they said they want to remaster the game, I was all in.
Yeah, Tony, I get dizzy watching you holding a glass of milk and doing a McFlip. So I can only imagine what it would be like in VR. How many takes did that take, honestly?
That was it.
That one take? No way, really?
Yeah. I tested it with a glass of water. And I purposely fell just to see what the water would do because I was afraid it was going to splash into my face and I wouldn't be able to see. And I honestly thought it was just going to be a big, beautiful disaster. Like I thought it was just going to be milk spraying everywhere. And I break the whole chain of the Got Milk challenge because mine was a failure, but I thought it would be funny. And when I tested with the water, I said to my friend, you guys, it stayed in the glass. Let's just try it. And it worked.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite Instagram posts of the week. Just the fact that you were able to pull that off, and then just the perfect slide. Got me. It's perfect. Let's go back to the game.
I'm much more used to falling than holding milk. So
fair enough. Speaking of falling, I've fallen a lot in your video game series over the years in playing it. And let's talk about the remaster itself. I mean, what can fans look forward to? I know that it's going to be very much like 1 and 2, maybe a little bit of updates. You can create a player, you can create a park. Like, what else can fans look forward to?
Well, all the same action, same levels, tricks, characters, music from the first 2 games, but then obviously updated to the current consoles with some new twists. We have some new music, we have some new characters, but and the control scheme, you can toggle it, but it's the control scheme you can do from 1 to Pro Skater 4. So if you're used to doing reverts and those kind of tricks, you can actually click on that to open it up, because I felt very strongly that the 3rd and 4th games allowed you to do bigger and better combos.
You mentioned there some fun secrets that we might see. Here's my capital J journalism question for you. We've seen a lot of Jack Black as part of the promotion of this game. There are some rumors out there, Tony, about how Jack might be involved in the game. What can you tell us about Jack Black and Tony Hawk Pro Skater, this remastered version?
That he might be involved in the game. I can tell you that. Just like you said.
Okay, that's as far as we can go. The rumor is he might be Officer Dick. Confirm or deny?
I cannot confirm nor deny that rumor.
Fair enough. I guess we'll
But
have to buy the game and
he
find
looks
out.
good in a uniform. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Okay. So he looked good and he looks good in uniform,
I'm
possibly
just
for several
saying, Jack
days
Black, you know, he
at
can
a
really
skate
wear a
park,
uniform.
stopping skateboarders from skating, being a villainous cop. He just looked good, possibly in that role, if you imagine it.
If you imagine it, yeah. He's more of a security guard, but yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. What other collabs are there? Are there any thoughts of maybe future collabs, maybe as like downloadable content, DLC, like anything that fans can look forward to?
Oh, absolutely. Well, as of now, you can have a very funny looking 80s version of myself in an actual in an actual outfit that I wore back then. But I want to do DLC stuff of skateboards, you know, updated clothing and everything else. But, you know, we got to see how the launch goes first. So
does this mean, I mean, a lot of people will look at this and say, boy, I hope this is the beginning of a long-term relationship and maybe even more Tony Hawk titles. What do you say to those people that are really crossing their fingers and hoping that maybe we'll see a Tony Hawk Pro Skater 6 or beyond?
I too am hoping that. I echo their thoughts.
Fair enough. What about you as a gamer, growing up a gamer? What were some of your first video games? What games did you love growing up?
Oh man. Well, I grew up in the arcade generation. So the first game that I really got hooked on was Missile Command. And then I had an Intellivision home console. Marble Madness actually brought me into computers. I had to buy a Commodore Amiga back in the day because it had Marble Madness on it. And then through the years, all the usual systems, Super NES, obviously like Nintendo 64, PlayStation, GameCube, Sega Genesis. I ran the gamut.
Did you play much of the skateboarding games before your own, like Skate or
All
Die
of them.
California games? Yeah, what were they like? Like, how did the
I
skate
bought
community embrace them?
I bought a Commodore 64 in order to play Skate or Die.
No way.
Yeah.
What did you think of them?
I thought they were fun. I mean, I can't sit here and blast them. I was happy that anyone included skating, and especially when 720 came out. When 720 came out, we were out of our minds excited. I mean, there was an actual stand-up arcade game that featured skateboarding. And then Skate or Die came to the home consoles. There was California games. What else was there? Tour de Thrash, I think. But
I think X Games had skateboarding.
You know, to me, I never really got. I felt like they were fun, but they didn't really. They just scratched the surface of skating in terms of skate culture and skate motivation and gameplay. I mean, they were pretty limited. So, you know, like 720, the highest score you can get on the half pipe is if you slide to a stop. So no one was really getting the core of what skating was all about, and that's tricks. And I felt like once we were able to unlock that, that's when it exploded.
What was your reaction when you first were approached to make a video game?
I was excited. I had actually been pitching a few developers about a game because a PC programmer approached me and said, "Hey, I think we could do something if we can work together." And we came up against just a lot of opposition. There was no support for it. Nobody wanted to sign on. He gave up. And eventually Activision called me because they heard that I had been pitching a skate game. And they said, "Look, we are working on a skate game. We would love your input on it." And when I saw the very, very early engine of what they were working on, I signed on right away.
How involved were you? I mean, I've heard interviews where you said that you've been very hands-on, especially in the early development of the series. Like, how involved were you in the process of creating the game, updating the game, you know, input, etc.?
Oh, very much so, especially in the early versions because I had to teach Neversoft about skating and everything about it, just even the nuances of how a board flips in the air or how you grab it. And eventually, I would say after the second or third game, they were all in with skateboarding. They were getting all the magazines, they were getting all the videos. I didn't have to give them a crash course of what a 360 flip to crooked grind looks like. And so that was easier for me. And then at that point, I just focused on the gameplay. But going into this version, the same thing. I was just playing it as it was in development and giving feedback.
Well, certainly a lot of people are looking forward to this version, and 1 and 2 certainly drove the game to great success. When did you realize, like even when the first one came out, when did you realize that you really had something truly successful with a lot of longevity on your hands?
Well, I think once our second game was released to such high praise, and they were talking about doing a third one, that was my first sign that we had something that was not just a novelty. But it was when the fourth game was released, the previous three were still in the top 10 of sales.
Wow.
And that was it. That was when we're here to stay. But in terms of for the next 5 years or so.
How did you choose the cast?
Well, the original cast, I was just trying to represent all styles of skating. So that's why there's some that are more technical. There's street skaters, there's vert skaters, there were bowl skaters, and obviously with some diversity. And then going forward, I just wanted to be very inclusive because skating has grown so much that you can't say one particular type of person and one particular person with a certain background is more apt to skate. Everyone's welcome to skate now.
Can you put into context, like you've said this in interviews before, but can you put into context, like what the game did for your career?
Yeah, it changed my life. I mean, it made, well, it definitely raised my profile in terms of more mainstream recognition. It allowed me to do things that I never, like I got to do an arena skate tour and sell tickets, you know, and have skating front and center as the action with music sort of on the side, and all kinds of other promotions, and to start a foundation for public skate parks. I mean, it's the reason that I'm here talking to you 20 years later is because of this game.
One thing I loved about the game was that it really lets you flex like video game muscles that you wouldn't normally flex in other games. It really felt unique for its time, right? Like, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, like, how much do you think the skateboard game did for video games versus the video game doing for skate culture in the mainstream? Like, do you think it was like a symbiotic relationship? Did one do better for the other?
Well, I hope that our game inspired other sports games to have some of that fun element of gameplay, the more free, what we call free skate, where you can just create your own challenges and keep coming back to the gameplay. And there were plenty of games that emulated that later on, but I think in terms of which influence had more impact, it was the game's influence on skateboarding was far bigger. It brought a whole new generation of people into skating, and many into the music, the style, the art, and a lot of them are still with it.
When you get recognized, what percentage of people will say, "Oh, Tony Hawk, I loved your video game," versus anything else?
That is definitely the number one go-to.
Wow.
Or these days, they see my Twitter and then they like to try to pretend they don't know who I am. It's like, hey, you look like Tony Hawk. I'm like, I know.
Hey, you're that guy that did that trick with the milk glass.
Yeah, that's
something like that. Last question for you. Do your kids play the game? And if so, who do they select as their character?
They do. And up until the release, the only character available was me. So they had to pick their dad. Although my son Riley is actually a featured character in the full release. So he's definitely playing his own character.
Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remastered, out September 4th on Windows, PS4, and Xbox One. Tony Hawk joining us here on ESPN Esports. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.